Disclaimer: this video does not contain my opinion on the subject matter it relates to. It is merely an audio-visual reading of the general content of a publicly available legal filing. In light of YouTube censorship policies, I have obscured or omitted any words, statements, and links found in the original document that could be used as the basis for claiming any specific violations of those policies in my presentation. I have done so to ensure that the video remains accessible to the public. Any such redacted language has been marked with the word censored, highlighted in yellow in the text, or blocked out wherever applicable in included graphic files. All URLs at the end of the original document, which constitute appendices to the legal filing, have been cut. I have made a good faith effort to accurately transcribe the content of the original document, except for the redacted portions thereof, although I cannot ensure that it is free of errors. The original legal filing can be located and downloaded as a PDF in the public domain. December 6, 2021, International Criminal Court Office of the Prosecutor Communications. The Hague, the Netherlands. Before the International Criminal Court, Treaty of Rome Statute, Article 15.1 and 53. Subject of complaint: violations of the Nuremberg Code. Violation of Article 6 of the Rome Statute. Violation of Article 7 of the Rome Statute. Violation of Article 8 of the Rome Statute. Violation of Article 8 bis 3 of the Rome Statute. Based on the extensive claims and enclosed documentation, we charge those responsible for numerous violations of the Nuremberg Code, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression in the United Kingdom, but not limited to individuals in these countries. Perpetrators: Prime Minister for the United Kingdom Boris Johnson, Chief Medical Officer for England and Chief Medical Advisor to the UK Government Christopher Whitty, former Secretary of State for Health and Social Care Matthew Hancock, current Secretary of State for Health and Social Care Sajid Javid, Chief Executive of Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency MHRA June Rain, Director General of the World Health Organization Tedros Ghebreyesus, Co-Chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation William Gates III, and Co-Chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Melinda Gates, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Pfizer Albert Bourla, Chief Executive Officer of AstraZeneca Stefan Bancel, Chief Executive Officer of Moderna Pascal Soriot, Chief Executive of Johnson & Johnson Alex Gorsky, President of the Rockefeller Foundation Dr. Rajiv Shah, Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease NIAID Dr. Anthony Fauci, Founder and Executive Chairman of the World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab, President of EcoHealth Alliance Dr. Peter Daszak. Victims: the peoples of the United Kingdom. Applicants: Hannah Rose, lawyer and human rights activist. Dr. Mike Yeadon, qualified life science researcher with a degree in biochemistry and toxicology and a research-based PhD in respiratory pharmacology. Former Vice President and Chief Scientist of Allergy and Respiratory Research at Pfizer. Piers Corbin, astrophysicist and activist. Mark Sexton, retired police officer. John O'Looney, funeral director and activist. Johnny McStay, activist. Louise Shotbolt, nurse and human rights activist. Legal representation and election of domicile. The applicants will be represented for the purposes of this procedure by Hannah Rose. Email censored for YouTube. Consequently, all subsequent correspondence shall be sent only to the email address given above. Any notification within the meaning of the statute of the court addressed in this way will be considered valid. Mr. Prosecutor: this communication and complaint is provided to the Office of the Prosecutor pursuant to the United Kingdom's accession to the International Criminal Court's Rome Statute, deposited with the Secretary-General of the United Nations on October 4, 2000. We have tried to raise this case through the local English police and the English court system without success. We have been unable to even get the case registered, either with the police or with the court, after several attempts. The statute for the ICC declares that the ICC is intended to complement, not to replace, national criminal systems. It prosecutes cases only when a state is unwilling or unable genuinely to carry out the investigation or prosecution. Article 17(1)(a). This is such a case, which is why we are addressing the ICC directly. Background: the censored virus vaccines are an innovative medical treatment which have only received temporary authorization under Regulation 174 of the Human Medicine Regulations Act 2012. The long-term effects and safety of the treatment in recipients are unknown. It is important to note that the censored virus vaccines are the world's first introduction to the synthetic censored molecule technology, and all previous immunizations worked in a totally different manner, by way of introducing a deactivated or weakened virus to the body to trigger a natural arousal of the immune system against it. As detailed by Dr. Mike Yeadon, the risks anticipated by this innovative medical treatment are hereby enclosed as Appendix 1 to this request. All Phase 3 censored vaccine trials are ongoing and not due to conclude until late 2022, early 2023. The vaccines are, therefore, currently experimental, with only limited short-term and no long-term adult safety data available. In addition, they are using a completely new censored molecule vaccine technology, which has never previously been approved for use in humans. Censored molecule is effectively a prodrug, and it is not known how much spike protein any individual will produce. Potential late-onset effects can take months or years to become apparent. The limited children's trials undertaken to date are totally underpowered to rule out uncommon but severe side effects. The censored vaccines do not meet the requirements to be categorized as vaccines and are in fact gene therapy, Appendix 8. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary quietly changed the definition of the term vaccine to include components of the censored molecule injection. The definition of vaccine was specifically changed due to the censored injection on February 5, 2021. Dr. Mike Yeadon, joint applicant on this request, asserts that claims calling the censored injections a vaccine is public manipulation and misrepresentation of clinical treatment. It's not a vaccination. It's not prohibiting infection. It's not a prohibiting transmission device. It's a means by which your body is conscripted to make the toxin that then allegedly your body somehow gets used to dealing with. But unlike a vaccine, which is to trigger the immune response, this is to trigger the creation of the toxin. Censored molecule uses the cell's machinery to synthesize proteins that are supposed to resemble the spike protein of the virus, which is what it uses to enter cells via the ACE2 receptor. These proteins are then identified by the immune system, which builds antibodies against them. The real concern is that these proteins could accumulate in the body, especially in regions of high concentration of ACE2 receptors, such as the gonads. If the immune system then attacks the location where they accumulate, then you could be dealing with an autoimmune condition. Censored tests. A review from the University of Oxford Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, Appendix 2, found that the standard censored test is so sensitive that it can detect old infections by picking up fragments of dead viral cells. Originally developed to detect the presence of DNA and RNA in biological samples, even its Nobel Prize-winning inventor Kary Mullis declared that censored test was never intended to diagnose a disease. It simply detects the presence of specific genetic material, which may or may not indicate infection. As Dr. Kary Mullis put it, the censored test technique can find almost anything in anybody. The censored test uses amplification cycles to find viral RNA. The sample is repeatedly chemically amplified to increase the RNA copies until they can be detected. Each cycle of amplification doubles the number of molecules in a sample. If you run enough cycles, you can effectively find a single molecule of any substance. Public Health England (PHE) policy confirms that the cycle threshold should be set around 25.6, and if the machine must run more than 25 to 35 cycles, Appendix 2A, to get the sample to the test's limit of detection, there isn't enough virus in the sample to matter clinically. We have information from Freedom of Information requests that as many as 40 to 45 cycles are being carried out, Appendix 3, 3A, 3B, 3C, which is too many because it increases the chance of a positive result even without censored virus RNA being present in the original sample, hence the asymptomatic individuals. In addition to being completely unreliable, the censored tests also contain carcinogenic ethylene oxide, Appendix 48. Censored virus is a biological weapon. Gain-of-function research. Chinese virologist Li Meng-Yen was among the first researchers to study censored virus in China after she was enlisted to investigate the origin of the virus by Superior Liu Pun. Dr. Li Meng-Yen and her team published a report, Appendix 4, claiming that the novel censored virus was developed as a laboratory product created by using bat-censored viruses ZC45 and/or ZXC21 as a template and/or backbone. The report states that ZC45 and ZXC21 were discovered between July 2015 and February 2017 and isolated and characterized by the aforementioned military research laboratories. It also says that when a non-military lab, the Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center, published a Nature article reporting a conflicting close phylogenetic relationship between SARS-censored and ZC45-ZXC2, rather than with RATG13, was quickly shut down for rectification. The report also accuses several publications of bowing to political pressure or of experiencing conflicts of interest so as not to publish findings that differ from the natural origin theory. The existing scientific publications supporting a natural origin theory rely heavily on a single piece of evidence, a previously discovered bat-censored virus named RATG13, which shares a 96% nucleotide sequence identity with SARS-censored. The National Institutes of Health, NIH, in the USA, has admitted to funding of gain-of-function research on bat-censored viruses at China's Wuhan lab, despite Dr. Anthony Fauci repeatedly denying this. In a letter to Republican James Comer, Appendix 5, NIH's Principal Deputy Director, A. Tabak, blamed EcoHealth Alliance, that funneled U.S. funds to the Wuhan lab, for not being transparent about the work it was doing. British scientist Peter Daszak, who runs EcoHealth, is accused by Tabak of failing to comply with the terms of the grant. As recently as November 2021, Fauci was accused of lying about gain-of-function research after documents obtained by The Intercept, Appendix 6, detailed grants given to EcoHealth Alliance for bat-censored virus studies. The $3.1 million grant was awarded for a 5-year period between 2014 and 2019. After the funding was renewed in 2019, it was suspended by the Trump administration in April 2020. The grant directed $599,000 to the Wuhan Institute of Virology for bat-censored virus research. British professor Angus Dalgleish and Norwegian scientist Dr. Birger Sørensen published a report in the Quarterly Review of Biophysics, Appendix 7, and claimed that the censored virus's spike protein contains sequences that appear to be artificially inserted. They claimed they had prima facie evidence of retroengineering in China for a year, but were ignored by academics and major journals. Dalgleish is a professor of oncology at St. George's University, London, and is best known for his breakthrough creating the first working HIV vaccine to treat diagnosed patients and allow them to go off medication for months. While analyzing censored virus samples last year in an attempt to create a vaccine, Dalgleish and Sørensen discovered unique fingerprints in the virus that they say could only have arisen from manipulation in a laboratory. They said they tried to publish their findings but were rejected by major scientific journals, which were at the time resolute that the virus jumped naturally from bats or other animals to humans. Even when former MI6 chief Sir Richard Dearlove spoke out publicly, saying the scientists' theory should be investigated, the idea was dismissed as fake news. Censored allotrope hydroxide. Dr. Andreas Nowak is a German chemist and one of the EU's top censored allotrope experts, carbon expert, and doctor in the field of activated carbon, whereby for his doctoral thesis he converted censored allotrope oxide into censored allotrope hydroxide. Professor Dr. Pablo Campra comes from the University of Almeria, and alongside Dr. Andreas Nowak he examined the censored vaccines for the presence of censored allotrope oxide with the micro-Raman spectroscopy, the study of frequencies. According to both doctors, the vaccines don't contain censored allotrope oxide, but do contain censored allotrope hydroxide. On November 23, 2021, Dr. Andreas Nowak released a video explaining what censored allotrope hydroxide is and how the nanostructures injected into the human body act as razor blades inside the veins of vaccine recipients. Dr. Andreas goes on to explain how, due to the nano size of the censored allotrope oxide structures, they would not show up on an autopsy, as toxicologists can't imagine that there are structures that can cut up blood vessels, causing people to bleed to death on the inside, so they would not be looking for them, given their atomic size. On 18 November 2020, Dr. Andreas Nowak was on a live stream on YouTube discussing the dangers of the censored vaccines when he was arrested on camera by armed German police, Appendix 41. On 26 November 2021, just hours after publishing his latest video about censored allotrope oxide and censored allotrope hydroxide, Appendix 42, he was attacked and murdered. We request a full investigation be done into the inclusion of censored allotrope hydroxide in the censored vaccines and into the assassination of Dr. Andreas Nowak. Inflated censored virus figures. The number of censored virus cases have been artificially inflated due to the inaccuracy and unreliability of the censored testing, and the number of censored virus deaths in the UK have been massively artificially inflated due to the fact that a censored virus death is recorded if an individual died for any reason within 28 days of a positive censored virus test that was confirmed with the inaccurate and unreliable censored tests. These deaths are being recorded as censored virus regardless of whether censored virus was the factual cause of death. A Freedom of Information request, Appendix 43, shows us that between March and June 2020, the total number of censored virus-related deaths in England and Wales with no pre-existing health conditions was 4,476. However, the censored virus deaths for the same period were recorded at 49,607, Appendix 44. We submit that a further way that the censored virus statistics have been artificially inflated is by the rebranding of the common influenza, pneumonia, and other respiratory infections as censored virus. Epidemiologist Knut Vitovsky, the former head of biostatistics, epidemiology, and research design at Rockefeller University, claims there may be quite a number of influenza cases included in the presumed censored virus category of people who have censored virus symptoms, which influenza symptoms can be mistaken for, but are not tested for SARS RNA. Those patients, he argued, also may have some SARS RNA sitting in their nose while being infected with influenza, in which case the influenza would be confirmed to be censored virus. Data from the ONS, Appendix 45, showed that deaths in 2018 from influenza and pneumonia amounted to 29,516, and in 2019 was 26,398. However, deaths in 2020 for influenza was recorded at just 394, and pneumonia at 13,619. Appendix 46. John O'Looney, a joint applicant on this request, is a funeral director running his own funeral home in Milton Keynes. He has testified, Appendix 47, that as a funeral director he saw a massive effort made to deliberately inflate censored virus death numbers. Cancer patients and stroke victims, and even one guy that was run over, all ended up with censored virus on their death certificate. We submit that the misrepresentation of censored virus cases and censored virus deaths warrants a full investigation by the court. Ineffectiveness of censored facial apparatus. The World Health Organization, WHO, has admitted that there is no evidence available on the usefulness of censored facial apparatus to protect non-sick individuals, Appendix 9. In addition to hypoxia and hypercapnia, breathing through censored facial apparatus residues bacterial and germ components on the inner and outside layer of the censored facial apparatus. These toxic components are repeatedly breathed back into the body, causing self-contamination. Breathing through censored facial apparatus also increases temperature and humidity in the space between the mouth and the censored facial apparatus, resulting in a release of toxic particles from the censored facial apparatus's materials. A systematic literature review estimated that aerosol contamination levels of censored facial apparatuses, including 13 to 202,549 different viruses. Rebreathing contaminated air with high bacterial and toxic particle concentrations, along with low O2 and high CO2 levels, continuously challenge the body homeostasis, causing self-toxicity and immunosuppression. Appendix 10. Alternative treatments. Dr. Peter McCullough is an internist, cardiologist, and professor of medicine at Texas A&M College of Medicine. He has completed his bachelor's degree at Baylor University and has completed his medical degree as an Alpha Omega Alpha graduate from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. He also completed his internal medicine residency at the University of Washington in Seattle, his cardiology fellowship, including service as chief fellow at William Beaumont Hospital, and his master's degree in public health at the University of Michigan. Censored chloroquine. The most widely studied and utilized drug in all of censored virus, it basically has three mechanisms of action. It reduces the viral entry through endosomes, it helps work as a zinc ionophore, and zinc actually works to impair the RNA-dependent polymerase. And lastly, it's an anti-inflammatory. It changes the overall profile of cells so there's less inflammation. 259 supportive trials, 385,000 individuals, and censored chloroquine is, like I say, our mainstay in censored virus treatment. We have large studies as outpatients demonstrating hazard ratios here, much less than 1, implying a 50% reduction in hospitalization and death from outpatient studies. We have a very large study from Iran where there's been, as you can see here, 28,000 individuals. They treat about 25% of their high-risk patients with a short course of censored chloroquine plus other drugs. 30% reduction in hospitalization and death. Appendix 15. Censored mectin. Another drug that impairs viral entry to the nucleus also has some properties against the spike protein. We have 60 trials with censored mectin, a much smaller amount of information than censored chloroquine, but that's still substantial. And here, censored mectin has favorable hazard ratios for both inpatient and outpatient use, about a 70% reduction in mortality. Appendix 16. Censored piravir. Available in 5 countries overall, it's like oral censored Desivir. Censored Desivir is currently approved in Japan as a treatment for patients infected with SARS censored, the virus that causes censored virus. Outside of Japan, censored Desivir is an investigational, unapproved drug. A report in the New England Journal of Medicine in May concludes that the broad-spectrum antiviral medication developed by the biopharmaceutical company Gilead Sciences was superior to placebo in shortening the time to recovery in adults hospitalized with censored virus, and who had evidence of lower respiratory tract infection. Appendix 17. Censored droids. This is a mainstay of inpatient treatment. A meta-analysis suggests a 30% reduction in mortality. Inhaled censored cyanide, known in the United States as censored McCourt, a randomized trial called the STOIC trial, there was an 87% reduction in hospitalizations with inhaled censored cyanide. So we have positive data for both oral and inhaled censored droids. Appendix 18. Censored chikhine, off-label. Censored chikhine is an anti-inflammatory drug. The largest, highest quality randomized prospective double-blind placebo-controlled trial. This was coordinated at Montreal Heart Institute. Over 4,000 outpatients with symptomatic censored virus, and among those who were confirmed positive, a 25% reduction in hospitalization and death. Appendix 19. Clade X and Event 201 scenario. In May 2018, the WEF partnered with Johns Hopkins to simulate a fictitious pandemic dubbed Clade X, Appendix 12, to see how prepared the world would be if ever faced with a catastrophic pandemic. A little over a year later, the WEF once again teamed up with Johns Hopkins, along with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to stage another pandemic exercise called Event 201 in October 2019, Appendix 13. Both simulations concluded that the world wasn't prepared for a global pandemic. A few short months following the conclusion of Event 201, which specifically simulated a censored virus outbreak, the World Health Organization, WHO, officially declared that the censored virus had reached pandemic status on March 11, 2020. The next severe pandemic will not only cause great illness and loss of life, but could also trigger major cascading economic and societal consequences that could contribute greatly to global impact and suffering. Event 201 Pandemic Simulation, October 2019. Since then, just about every scenario covered in the Clade X and Event 201 simulations has come into play, including governments implementing lockdowns worldwide, the collapse of many industries, growing mistrust between governments and citizens, a greater adoption of biometric surveillance technologies, social media censorship in the name of combating misinformation, the desire to flood communication channels with authoritative sources, a global lack of personal protective equipment, the breakdown of international supply chains, mass unemployment, rioting in the streets. After the nightmare scenarios had fully materialized by mid-2020, the WEF founder declared, "Now is the time for a great reset," in June 2021. We submit that it is highly unlikely, to the point that it is unbelievable, that this is purely excellent forecasting, planning, and modeling on the part of the WEF and partners, that Clade X and Event 201 turned out to be so prophetic. Agenda 21/30 and the Great Reset Agenda. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future. Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum. The so-called Great Reset promises to build a more secure, more equal, and more stable world if everyone on the planet agrees to act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. Appendix 11. But it wouldn't have been possible to contemplate materializing such an all-encompassing plan for a new world order without a global crisis, be it manufactured or of unfortunate happenstance that shocked society to its core. Together, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, the World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation submitted 7 recommendations for governments, international organizations, and global business to follow in the event of a pandemic. Appendix 14. The Event 201 recommendations call for a greater collaboration between the public and private sectors, while emphasizing the importance of establishing partnerships with unelected global institutions such as the WHO, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the International Air Transport Organization to carry out a centralized response. One of the recommendations calls for governments to partner with social media companies and news organizations to censor content and control the flow of information. According to the report, governments will need to partner with traditional and social media companies to research and develop nimble approaches to countering misinformation. National public health agencies should work in close collaboration with WHO to create the capability to rapidly develop and release consistent health messages. For their part, media companies should commit to ensuring that authoritative messages are prioritized and that false messages are suppressed, including through the use of technology. Censorship. Throughout 2020, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube have been censoring, suppressing, and flagging any censored virus-related information that goes against World Health Organization (WHO) recommendations as a matter of policy, just as Event 201 had recommended. Big tech companies have also deployed the same content suppression tactics during the 2020 U.S. presidential elections, attaching disputed claims on content that question election integrity. The UK government and governments around the world are using the pandemic to crack down on free expression and access to information. From the onset of censored virus, political considerations have clashed with concerns about public health and free expression. Authorities have blocked legitimate websites and ordered the removal of unwanted content. Officials have reinforced these controls by criminalizing more categories of online expression and arresting journalists, activists, and members for public speaking about the government's performance. To suppress unfavorable health statistics, critical reporting, and other censored virus content, the UK government has blocked websites or forced users, social media platforms, or online outlets to delete information. There has been an unprecedented assault on the freedom of doctors to care for their patients, and Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of the censored nucleic acid vaccines, has been deplatformed on all social media for speaking out against the censored virus injections. Some academic journals are blocking the publication of studies showing the effectiveness of drugs such as censored mectin and censored chloroquine. Smear campaigns are being waged against any doctors and scientists who challenge the WHO narrative on censored virus and the censored virus vaccines. We are in a situation where governments and global NGOs have seized control of the medical profession. Parallels to 1930s Germany. There are several survivors of the German Holocaust drawing stark parallels between censored virus restrictions and the beginning of the Holocaust. An open letter sent to the European Medical Agency, EMA, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, UK, the Australian Health Regulation Agency, AHPRA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, Australia, MedSafe, New Zealand, and the Federation of Medical Regulatory Authorities, FMRAC, Canada, Appendix 50, states, "We, the survivors of the atrocities committed against humanity during the Second World War, feel bound to follow our conscience. Another Holocaust of greater magnitude is taking place before our eyes. We call upon you to stop this ungodly medical experiment on humankind immediately. It is a medical experiment to which the Nuremberg Code must be applied. Rabbi Hillel Handler, Hagar Shafrir, Soren Shapira, Masha Orel, Maury Crispane, et al." During an interview with Dr. Rainer Fulmich, Appendix 51, Holocaust survivor Vera Sharov draws on her experience during Nazi Germany to form her perspective on what is happening in the world today. During the interview, she goes on to say, "Under the Nazi regime, moral norms were systematically obliterated. The medical profession and institutions were radically transformed. Academic science, the military industry, and clinical medicine were tightly interwoven, as they are now. The Nazi system destroyed a social conscience in the name of public health. Violations against individuals and classes of human beings were institutionalized. Eugenics-driven public health policies replaced the physician's focus on the good of the individual. The German medical profession and institutions were perverted. Coercive public health policies violated individual civil and human rights. Criminal methods were used to enforce policy. Nazi propaganda used fear of infectious epidemics to demonize Jews as spreaders of disease, as a menace to public health. Fear and propaganda were the psychological weapons the Nazis used to impose a genocidal regime, and today, some are beginning to understand why the German people didn't rise up. Fear kept them from doing the right thing. Medical mandates are a major step backwards toward a fascist dictatorship and genocide. Government dictates, medical intervention. These undermine our dignity as well as our freedom. The stark lesson of the Holocaust is that whenever doctors join forces with government and deviate from their personal, professional, clinical commitment to do no harm to the individual, medicine can then be perverted from a healing humanitarian profession to a murderous apparatus. What sets the Holocaust apart from all other mass genocides is the pivotal role played by the medical establishment, the entire medical establishment. Every step of the murderous process was endorsed by the academic, professional medical establishment. Medical doctors and prestigious medical societies and institutions lent the veneer of legitimacy to infanticide, mass murder of civilians. T4 was the first industrialized medical murder project in history. The first victims were disabled German infants and children under 3. The next victims were the mentally ill, followed by the elderly in nursing homes. The murderous operations were methodical and followed protocol very, very carefully. B. The Nuremberg Code. A medical code of ethics based on the laws under which the Nazi criminals were judged in USA versus Karl Brandt et al., Nuremberg Physicians' Trial, for their role in conducting horrific medical experiments during the Second World War. The Nuremberg Code later constituted the basis for the Helsinki Declaration 1965, which binds the World Medical Association and practicing physicians to act in the individual patient's best interest when providing medical care. Article 21 of the Rome Statute sets out the legal sources upon which the ICC may draw. The statute defines 3 primary sources of international law: international treaties, international custom, and general principles of law recognized by civilized nations. It is recognized that the 3 sources are of equal value and that there is no hierarchy among them. According to the statute, subsidiary means for determining the rules of law are judicial decisions and academic writings. Besides these enumerated sources, international legal rules can also be created by unilateral acts, such as declaration or a reservation. Shabas William, An Introduction to the International Criminal Court, 155, 2017. We submit to the Court that the Nuremberg Code qualifies as a source of international law by way of Article 21, 1b of the Rome Statute. Article 21.3 states that the application and interpretation of law must be consistent with internationally recognized human rights. We submit that Physicians' Trial case established a precedent that must be drawn upon for the purpose of this request. And we submit for consideration the notion that the Nuremberg Code qualifies as a source of international law under the Jus Cogens principle. The elements of customary Jus Cogens international law include the widespread repetition by states of similar international acts over time, state practice, the requirement that the acts must occur out of a sense of obligation, opinio juris, and that the acts are taken by a significant number of states and not rejected by a significant number of states. In 1950, the International Law Commission listed as evidence of customary international law treaties, decisions of national courts and international tribunals, national legislation, diplomatic correspondence, opinions of national legal advisors, and the practice of international organizations. Report of the International Law Commission to the General Assembly, Part 2. Ways and means of making the evidence of customary international law more readily available. Practice requirement. We submit that this requirement is satisfied by way of the pharmaceutical manufacturers operating internationally, and the Nuremberg Code for Medical Practice being extended into general codes of medical ethics by both states, global NGOs, and to which all physicians and pharmaceutical companies are bound. The Nuremberg Code has not been officially adopted in its entirety as law by any nation. Nonetheless, its basic requirement of informed consent has been universally accepted and is articulated in international law in Article 7 of the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966. Informed consent, with specific reliance on the Nuremberg Code, is also the basis of the International Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical Research involving human subjects. The most recent guidelines promulgated by the World Health Organization and the Council for International Organizations of Medical Sciences, 1993. Opinio juris sive necessitatis requirement. We submit that the worldwide recognition, acceptance, adoption, and practice of the ethical standards of the Nuremberg Code through general codes of medical ethics amounts to an obligation on physicians and pharmaceutical manufacturers to abide by the principles. Any physician or research scientist found to have breached any of the 10 principles of the Nuremberg Code would face criminal liability. Therefore, we submit that the opinion juris requirement is satisfied, qualifying the Nuremberg Code as a source of international law under the jus cogens customary norm principle. It is our intention to present to you and detail how, in the United Kingdom this year, the government of the United Kingdom, with its ministers and senior officials, have violated the Nuremberg Code, not only in a single aspect, but in many aspects. Informed consent to participate in a medical experiment. The first principle of the Nuremberg Code is a willingness and informed consent by the person to receive treatment and participate in an experiment. The person is supposed to activate freedom of choice without the intervention, either through force, deceit, fraud, threat, solicitation, or any other type of binding or coercion. When the heads of the Ministry of Health as well as the Prime Minister presented the vaccine in the United Kingdom and began the vaccination of United Kingdom residents, the vaccinated were not advised that in practice they would be taking part in a medical experiment and that their consent is required under the Nuremberg Code. This, as a matter of fact, is a genetic medical experiment on human beings performed without informed consent under a severe and blatant offense of the Nuremberg Code. Alternative treatments. On the subject of informed consent for medical treatment, and based on the Nuremberg Code principles, an obligation exists to detail and suggest to a patient several treatment alternatives, detailing the medical process and all that is included in it, as well as the advantages and disadvantages/benefits and risks existing in every treatment, to enable him to make an intelligent personal decision regarding the treatment he prefers. As stated, this choice must be made freely by the individual. Despite all of the above stated, the government of the United Kingdom and the Ministry of Health continue to fail to present the citizens of the United Kingdom with the currently existing alternatives for treating censored virus. Alternative treatments that have now been proven to be both extremely safe and extremely efficacious in the treatment of censored virus, with up to a 100% success rate with alternative treatments mentioned above. The governments of the United Kingdom continue to solicit their citizens, pressuring and manipulating them in blatant violation of the informed consent process, intentionally concealing information regarding the vaccinations, and creating an atmosphere of fear and coercion. The experiment will be conducted to prevent suffering or physical injury. It is known that the censored molecule vaccination treatments have caused the death of many, as well as injury and severe damage, including disablement and paralysis, after the vaccine was administered. Despite this fact, the government did not instruct the initiation of an investigation into the matter. It is also questionable that given the experimental nature of these vaccinations, that there are not any full reports available of the numbers of dead or injured, as may be expected in such a medical process, for the benefit of the public participating in the experiment. The experiment must not be conducted when there is reason to assume that death or real injury will occur. Regarding the violation of this principle, as stated above, the data on cases of death from the treatment is suppressed, and we the citizens hear only by word of mouth and on social networks, friends, neighbors, or relatives, not from the state media. The individual in charge of the experiment must be prepared to terminate the experiment at any stage if he has probable cause to believe it will cause injury, disability, or death of the experiment participant. It has already been proven that many have died from the censored molecule treatments, were injured, or became disabled. However, the government of the United Kingdom continues to compel this dangerous experiment on its citizens. The Rome Statute. It is our further intention to present to you and detail how, in the United Kingdom this year, the government of the United Kingdom, with its ministers and senior officials, have violated the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, not only in a single aspect, but in many aspects. Article 6. Genocide. Pursuant to the Rome Statute's Article 6, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Killing members of these groups. The group in this case is in principle the entire population of the United Kingdom and the world, starting with the elderly, chronically ill, and disabled. Causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group. Proven long-term effects 8 months after first being infected by the virus, Appendix 20. Massive short-term damage and death from the vaccines. As of 24th November 2021, for the UK, 136,582 yellow cards have been reported for the Pfizer vaccine. 238,086 have been reported for the AstraZeneca, 19,101 for the Moderna, and 1,280 have been reported where the brand was not specified. That is a total of 395,049 reported adverse reactions in the UK alone that were serious enough to warrant being reported to the Yellow Card Reporting System, Appendix 20. Expected long-term effects as above in the vaccinated. Statistical evidence suggests massive increase in deaths after vaccination, Appendix 21. Immeasurable mental harm caused by 24/7 psychological warfare propaganda, false positive censored tests, lack of medical care, and mass vaccinations. Increase in alcoholics relapsing, eating disorders relapsing, and not being managed in the community due to lockdowns. The number of vulnerable children calling Childline was up 37% over lockdowns, Appendix 22. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. Destruction of wealth and businesses by the imposed lockdowns, Appendix 23. Inflicting damage on the immune system of all those who either got ill from the virus and/or received the censored molecule vaccine, the censored facial apparatus mandates, and mandatory test regimes. Statistics prove that those who received a censored vaccine are at greater risk of getting seriously ill, and even family members of the vaccinated are becoming ill and in some cases dying. This is an extremely alarming signal of what the future holds. Appendix 24. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Proven increase in spontaneous abortion after a censored vaccination. A recent study in the New England Medical Journal showed 8 in 10 women had a miscarriage after taking a censored vaccine before the 3rd trimester. Appendix 25. Expected reduction in fertility after a censored vaccination due to the deliberate change in DNA sequencing from the censored molecule type. Appendix 26. Article 7. Crimes against Humanity. Pursuant to the Rome Statutes, Article 7, crimes against humanity means any of the following acts when committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. Murder. Statistics from the Office for National Statistics, ONS, shown below, also Appendix 27, have recorded between January 2, 2021 and July 2, 2021, 18,653 deaths within 21 days of the first dose of a censored vaccine. 4,388, 30%, of those involving the censored virus. 73,822 deaths 21 days or more after the first dose. 7,289, 11%, of those involved the censored virus. 11,652 deaths within 21 days of a second dose. 182, 1.5%, involved the censored virus, and 57,721 deaths 21 days or more after the second dose, 458, 0.8%. Further data from the ONS shown in the tables below, also Appendix 28, demonstrates that there was a 23% increase in the deaths registered in January 2021 compared with January 2020. Similarly, with February 2021 compared with February 2020, there was increase in overall deaths of 26%. We know that the censored vaccines were rolled out in the UK in December of 2020, and anyone who was genuinely willing to take the vaccines freely without political pressure or coercion was going to do so within the first few weeks of the rollout. This staggering increase in death within the first 8 weeks of the introduction of the experimental vaccines is alarming to say the least, and warrants a full investigation by the court. The protocol in the UK for an individual who tests positive for censored virus has been to self-isolate and stay home until you absolutely can't breathe, at which point you go to the hospital to be put on a ventilator and in most cases die. A study, Appendix 29, of 1,023 censored virus patients on ventilators found that 42% of them died and 57% survived. We submit that the suppression of safe and effective alternative treatments for censored virus amounts to murder and warrants a full investigation by the court. Data taken from the ONS below shows that during April 2020, there were 26,541 deaths that occurred in care homes, an increase of 17,850 on the 5-year average. Appendix 52. The Liverpool care pathway was abandoned in 2014 after being deemed inhumane, but evidence suggests it was brought back at the start of the pandemic in early 2020 and is being implemented in care homes across the UK. In a House of Commons document, Matt Hancock and Conservative MP Dr. Luke Evans discussed the use of medications to give censored virus patients a good death, euthanasia. In March 2020, Hancock ordered 2 years' worth of a sedative called midazolam from a French supplier, Appendix 31. At the time the order was made, it was claimed that midazolam was for the treatment of censored virus patients. Midazolam suppresses the respiratory system. Censored virus is a respiratory disease. We request the court carry out a full investigation into why the UK government would purchase 2 years' worth of midazolam, a drug associated with respiratory suppression and respiratory arrest, to treat a disease that causes respiratory suppression and respiratory arrest. The document, Appendix 32, also provides a table confirming dosage of midazolam for the elderly or unwell should be no more than 0.5 milligrams to 1 milligram. Side effects include cardiorespiratory depression, and the drug should be used with caution in those suffering respiratory disease. A document produced by the NHS, Appendix 33, states that midazolam should be used for comfort at the end-of-life care due to censored virus, to ease fear, anxiety, and agitation. The document states that midazolam should be used for sedation prior to the patient requiring mechanical ventilation. The same document also provides confirmation that midazolam has the potential to impair the respiration system, particularly in the presence of disease or old age, and clearly states that dosage should be kept to a minimum and should be within the manufacturer's guidelines. We submit that creating policy for treating patient allegedly suffering anxiety due to censored virus with a starting dose of 2.5 milligrams of midazolam when the recommended dose for elderly and/or frail patients is 0.25 milligrams amounts to unlawful euthanasia and murder and warrants a full investigation by the court. Additionally, a large number of vaccinated people are getting seriously ill and are at risk of dying from an immune system failure, antibody-dependent enhancement in the near future. Appendix 34. Extermination. There is good reason to assume that a large percentage of the UK population and world population is now at risk of either serious illness or death due to the recent censored molecule vaccines. Animal studies conducted in 2012 to 2013, Appendix 35 and 36, to test censored molecule vaccines found most animals died within 2 weeks of receiving the treatment. This is equivalent to 1.5 years for humans. The vaccinated have been exposed to the very same man-made spike protein as the virus. Both the virus and the vaccines have been proven to be able to change human DNA. Appendix 37. The immune system is unlikely to ever return to what it was after receiving a censored vaccination. Several high-level immunologists and vaccine designers, including joint applicant on this request Dr. Mike Yeadon, have warned, in the worst possible scenario, most of the human race who have received these censored molecule treatments will perish. Imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law. Ban on freedom of travel, both national and international. Forced lockdown and economic warfare, especially on small business owners, forcing people to be dependent on the state for survival. Forced quarantine in hotels for both healthy and false positive censored tests and rapid censored tests returning from international travel. Forced self-isolation at the demand of NHS Track and Trace app. Severe deprivation of physical liberties on travel, visiting friends, arranging parties, taking part in cultural and sports activities, religious congregations. Torture. Psychological terror and warfare, mental torture, is being administered by the government, state media, and mainstream media, along with social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Google. Rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancies, enforced sterilizations, or any other form of sexual violence of comparable gravity. One effect of the vaccines suggested by a number of medical doctors and scientists is enforced sterilizations, with a number of spontaneous abortions/miscarriages reported by pregnant women who received a censored vaccine. Appendix 38-39. Persecution against any identifiable group or collectively on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender as defined in paragraph 3, or other grounds that are universally recognized as impermissible under international law, in connection with any act referred to in this paragraph or any crime within the jurisdiction of the court. Persecution against the unvaccinated, loss of jobs, refusal to public events. persecution against all religious groups being hindered to attend places of worship. Apartheid. The real effect of the new vaccine passport will introduce a new form of medical apartheid for the benefit of pressuring people to get vaccinated and to deprive those who are not vaccinated of the right to travel, work, and participate in society as normal. Other inhumane acts of a similar character intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to the body or to mental or physical health. Social distancing measures, censored facial apparatus mandates, fear-mongering, vaccination pressure as well as the vaccines themselves are all reasons for serious injury to the body, mind, and soul. Article 8. War Crimes. Contextual element of a war crime. We submit to you that a covert war has been waged against the people of the United Kingdom and the world through the release of the biological weapon SARS censored and the additional bioweapon censored molecule gene therapy vaccines. We submit that the people of the United Kingdom and the world are under systemic attack from those who released the before-mentioned biological weapons and by those individuals within the UK government and international leaders against which we have brought this request, who seek to serve the same agenda. We therefore submit that the contextual element of a war crime has been met, and the alleged crimes took place in the context of an international and non-international armed conflict. Mens rea element. We further submit that the members of the UK government and world international leaders against which we have brought this complaint are knowingly working on behalf of this global agenda for depopulation through the biological weapons known as SARS censored and the censored molecule vaccines. We submit, therefore, that the members of the UK government and world leaders against which we have brought this complaint have both knowledge and intent with respect to these alleged crimes. The court shall have jurisdiction in respect of war crimes in particular when committed as part of a plan or policy or as part of a large-scale commission of such crimes. Pursuant to the Rome Statute Article 8, war crimes means grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions of August 12, 1949, namely, any of the following acts against persons or property protected under the provisions of the relevant Geneva Convention. Willful killing. We have provided statistical data of the death rate of the vaccines killing a relatively large proportion of recipients, with numbers increasing as a result of more vaccinations being administered. It is a logical conclusion that the continuing use of these vaccines constitutes a willful killing. Even if the victims are predominantly elderly, we also have a relatively high proportion of deaths and harm for younger and healthier people. We have provided evidence that the use of 5 times the recommended amount of midazolam for patients in care homes amounts to willful killing. Censored hydroxide in the vaccines. Torture. The censored SARS virus is a man-made gain-of-function virus. It was created as a biological experiment at the Wuhan Institute of Virology during a period of at least 10 to 15 years, according to massive documentation enclosed hereby. The virus was released either by an accident or deliberately. The development of such a biological weapon is a crime on its own merit. The use of the censored facial apparatuses by a mandate also constitutes a biological experiment, which has caused massive harms as documented in the Danish Censored Facial Apparatus Study, Appendix 40. The use of the test pins and the use of cancer-rated chemicals in the noses of millions of humans are also clearly a biological experiment or warfare. The so-called vaccines are only approved for emergency use only, and the massive use of these gene therapy drugs constitute the largest biological experiment in human history and causing an irreversible change to the DNA through the vaccination. Such an experiment on our DNA is the worst crime ever committed against the human race, totally without informed consent. Willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. The forced use of censored facial apparatuses has caused great harm, both physically and mentally. The closing down of doctors' offices has clearly caused serious injury to body and health, with a number of serious illnesses going undiagnosed and/or untreated for months due to closures. The vaccines are proven to kill and cause major damage to health, based on the short-term effects only. The psychological warfare and economic warfare by the lockdowns, combined with the medical and biological warfare, causes immense injury to the health. The denial of use of effective medicine, censored chloroquine, censored Mectin, against censored SARS, is a cause of serious injury to body or health and the cause of many preventable deaths in the UK. Suppression of alternative treatments. Use of ventilators with such low success rate. Midazolam used to euthanize elderly in care homes. Extensive destruction and appropriation of property, not justified by military necessity and carried out unlawfully and wantonly. The extensive economical destruction of business activity, as well as private wealth and personal and business income due to UK lockdowns, has led to a massive appropriation of private property by the banks from people who are not able to achieve a normal income due to all the effects of the lockdowns. A massive transfer of property from the middle class to the ultra-rich globalists will be the consequence of these policies worldwide. This can be interpreted as the biggest land and power grab in modern history. Intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population as such, or against individual civilians not taking direct part in hostilities. The people of the United Kingdom and the entire human race are currently under attack by way of these draconian measures and biological warfare, which is an integrated part of a psychological and economic warfare. Intentionally launching an attack in the knowledge that such attack will cause incidental loss of life or injury to civilians, or damage to civilian objects, or widespread, long-term and severe damage to the natural environment, which would be clearly excessive in relation to the concrete and direct overall military advantage anticipated. The creation of the censored SARS virus was the precondition for launching this attack. There is a timeline going back to the 1990s and the first SARS-1 virus, as to the MERS virus, and to both U.S. military biological research, DARPA, linked to French, British, Australian, and to a large extent the Chinese efforts done during more than 15 years. There is a clear link to the so-called globalist elite, the Club of Rome, the WEF, Davos Group, globalist politicians, the biggest capitalists on earth, and their plan of Agenda 2030, UN, WHO, and the Great Reset. These people have clearly spoken of a need for a great global depopulation, and Bill Gates, among others, have stated that the vaccinations is one way to do it. Gain-of-function manipulation of the virus has given the virus properties that makes it able to spread 10 to 20 times compared to the SARS-1 and MERS and all other censored viruses. The scientists behind this gain-of-function research have created a dangerous synthetic virus, as documented enclosed, with a dangerous HIV GP120 component to make it dormant like HIV, Appendix 49. The project seems to be a global conspiracy to radically change both the demographical as well as the political landscape by a transformation from a democratic system into a totalitarian world to be ruled by a centralized, unelected elite. The massive destruction of life, the effects of economic warfare connected to an alleged medical emergency, and a massive psychological warfare operation with the initial aim of brainwashing the population into accepting mass vaccination as the only remedy for returning to a less than normal situation and the only available first step. The massive economic meltdown is leading to a financial collapse of epic proportions, causing states and currencies, at least in Europe, to collapse totally. Based on the economic ruin and catastrophe, it is likely that martial law will be introduced, a result of the economic collapse and the coming social unrest. Under the Defense Act 2020, new powers were given to the police to strengthen enforcement powers to reduce the spread of censored virus, protect the NHS, and save lives. The financial crisis will most likely lead to a collapse of both banks and central banks, and loss of private property on a massive scale, to the benefit of the ultra-rich elite only. New bailout rules and delays on financial reporting has only delayed this crash. On top of all of this, and other measures, the medium and long-term effects of both the censored SARS as well as the vaccines will soon be apparent, causing massive illness and death of biblical proportions never seen before. Article 8, BIS 3, Crimes of Aggression. For the purpose of this statute, crime of aggression means the planning, preparation, initiation, or execution by a person in a position effectively to exercise control over or to direct the political or military action of a state, of an act of aggression which, by its character, gravity, and scale, constitutes a manifest violation of the Charter of the United Nations. This is a global criminal conspiracy, which has been planned for several decades. It is now obvious that the plan involves the ultra-rich and leaders of most nation-states, with a few exceptions. It is also clear that powerful think tanks including WEF in Davos, as well as the Club of Rome, and other NGOs like WHO and GAVI among others, are at the center of this draconian criminal conspiracy. Under the official slogan, Build Back Better, used by the President of WHO, the President of USA, as well as the President of WEF, the Prime Minister of the UK, as well as countless other world leaders. The goal of this activity is to create a new world order through the UN's Agenda 2030 by dismantling all the democratic nation-states step by step, controlled by an unelected elite, and to destroy the freedoms and basic human rights of the peoples of the earth. In addition to this, the aim is to destroy small and medium-sized businesses, moving the market shares to the largest corporations owned by the global elite. The fulfillment of this goal will most likely lead to full enslavement of mankind. This is being done by means of the threat from both a dangerous biological weapon, the virus, the vaccines, the testing test pins, the censored facial apparatus mandates, and all other measures, all of which constitute not only a breach of national laws, but also a fundamental breach of the Charter of the United Nations and the Treaty of Rome and our fundamental human rights. It is of the utmost urgency that ICC take immediate action, taking all of this into account, to stop the rollout of censored vaccinations, introduction of unlawful vaccination passports, and all other types of illegal warfare mentioned herein currently being waged against the people of the United Kingdom by way of a court injunction. D. Request for the opening of an inquiry. Jurisdiction. Alleged crimes within the jurisdiction of the court. On the basis of the information available, there is a reasonable basis to believe that violations of the Nuremberg Code, genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes have been committed. Place and date of alleged commission of the crimes. Territory. The above crimes are alleged to have been committed in the territory of the United Kingdom and the world. Since the United Kingdom is a state party, the court may exercise jurisdiction over all alleged crimes committed on United Kingdom territory since October 4, 2000, irrespective of the nationality of the accused. In particular, Article 12.2a provides that the court may exercise its jurisdiction over crimes referred to in Article 5 if the state on the territory of which the conduct in question occurred is a party to the statute. Thus, since the alleged crimes identified in this request have been committed on the territory of a state party to the Rome Statute, the court has territorial jurisdiction over these alleged crimes, regardless of whether the alleged suspects are nationals of a state party. D. Acande, the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court over nationals of non-parties, legal basis and limits. A suspect is not required to be physically present in the territory of a state party when a crime is committed for the court to be able to exercise jurisdiction over his or her conduct, as long as the crime imputed to the suspect occurred within the confines of such territory. Prosecutor versus Saif al-Islam Gaddafi and Abdullah al-Senussi, Appeals Chamber, Judgment on the Appeal of Libya against the decision of Pretrial Chamber 1 of 31st May 2013 entitled Decision on the Admissibility of the Case against Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. Date: the crimes allegedly committed on the territory of the United Kingdom between and fall within the court's jurisdiction, ratione temporis. Admissibility, complementarity. Legal references. Article 17(1)A and B establishes a twofold test for complementarity. Whether at the time of the proceedings in respect of an admissibility challenge there is an ongoing investigation or prosecution of the same case at the national level, first limb, and, if this is answered in the affirmative, whether the state is unwilling or unable genuinely to carry out such investigations or prosecutions, second limb. Prosecutor versus Germain Katanga and Mateo Ungujulo Chui, Appeals Chamber, Judgments on the appeal of Mr. Germain Katanga against the oral decision of Trial Chamber 2 of 12th June 2009 on the admissibility of the case. Inaction by a state under the first limb renders a case admissible before the court, subject to an assessment of gravity under Article 17(1)D. Katanga Admissibility Appeals Judgment, paragraph 78. The prosecution conducts its determinations on complementarity in relation to the potential cases that are likely to be the focus of an investigation by the prosecution. The admissibility provisions of the statute are founded on the complementary relationship between the ICC and national criminal jurisdictions. As such, in principle, it is only national criminal investigations and/or prosecutions of a state that can trigger the application of Article 17(1)A through C. Gravity. The gravity assessment has been conducted against the backdrop of the potential cases that are likely to arise from an investigation into the situation. Kenya Article 15 Decision, paragraphs 50, 58, and 188. Côte d'Ivoire Article 15 Decision, paragraph 202. A gravity assessment involves a generic examination of whether the persons or groups of persons relevant to the assessment capture those who may bear the greatest responsibility for the alleged crimes committed. The assessment must also be done from both a quantitative and a qualitative viewpoint, and factors such as nature, scale, and manner of commission of the alleged crimes, as well as their impact on victims, are all indicators of the gravity of a given case. Kenya Article 15 Decision, paragraphs 60 to 62, Côte d'Ivoire Article 15 Decision, paragraphs 203 to 205, Georgia Article 15 Decision, paragraph 51. Accordingly, the prosecution's submissions on gravity relate to an assessment of gravity of the entire situation rather than the gravity one or more potential cases. Based on the information available, the potential case concerning alleged crimes committed by members of the United Kingdom government and world leaders mentioned herein are of sufficient gravity to justify further action by the court. The alleged crimes have been committed on a large scale, with reports that murder has been practiced institutionally. Interests of justice. The seriousness and extent of the crimes committed in the United Kingdom, highlighted by the scope of people that these crimes affect, that these crimes continue to be committed, the wide range of perpetrators, the recurring patterns of criminality, and the limited prospects for accountability at the national level, all weigh heavily in favor of an investigation. Victims of alleged crimes within the context of the situation have manifested their interest in seeing justice done. We have sought to ascertain the interests of victims through direct consultations with victims' organizations in the United Kingdom, as well as through examination of communications and publicly available information. In light of the gravity of the acts committed and the absence of relevant national proceedings against those who appear to be most responsible for the most serious crimes within the situation, the potential case that would arise from an investigation of the situation would be admissible. Taking into account the gravity of the crimes and the interests of the victims, there are no substantial reasons to believe that an investigation would not serve the interests of justice. Experience shows that impunity is a factor that aggravates the commission of crimes. The decision to seize the pre-trial chamber for the initiation of the investigation would be hailed by the peoples of the United Kingdom and the world. This decision would have a particularly useful role, as it would be a response to crimes currently being committed. It would inevitably bring about a change in practices, at least in the extent to mandated vaccinations and vaccine passports, and this decision would save lives, limiting the number of new wounded by these censored molecule treatments. The request for investigation meets the criteria of the statute and will constitute progress in the fight against impunity and ultimately secure the survival of the human race as we know it. And justice will be done. We want to repeat, it is of the utmost urgency that ICC take immediate action, taking all of this into account, to stop the rollout of censored vaccinations, introduction of unlawful vaccination passports, and all other types of illegal warfare mentioned herein, currently being waged against the people of the United Kingdom by way of an immediate court injunction.